Hi guys, what a crazy week it's been. We welcomed our beautiful little girl a week ago, and I've just got home and we got all settled in, and now I can get on to filming this episode of Stalking Shadows. I'm just out of the wind here, see a beautiful waterbuck bull behind me, and we're on one of the cabins, and we swing around, and that's the view we've got all the way down the valley, and there's the fire pit. So yeah, we're just hiding out the wind here, and this is quite an interesting story. It's more along the lines of planning and prepping for your next trip when you come out, and things that I always advise clients what they should bring with and use. So one of the biggest things that I advise clients for is when you come to hunt South Africa, make sure you bring that favorite white-tailed deer rifle that you use, the Old Faithful, something that you've hunted season after season with, that you're super comfortable with, and that you're accurate at hunting with, because it'll make your trip in South Africa so much sweeter and so much better knowing the weapon that you're hunting with. So in this season, or in this episode I should say, we had a client come out, Rob, and this was at the time where your short mags were becoming very popular. I got nothing against the calibers, guys. The short mags are great calibers. He brought out his brand new 270 Winchester short mag, and it was set up with a Pentex scope on it, which I thought Pentex made cameras, not rifle scopes. So that was my understanding on the scope. Beautiful synthetic stock rifle. A real, like it was a bush gun, you know what I mean? And it shot super accurately at the range, but it was new to Robert. So we headed out to the shooting range, got set up. The group of guys that are an awesome group of guys. This thing shot well. The next morning we headed out to hunt at my uncle's place. Obviously I did a lot of hunting at my uncle's place, and it was one of these drizzly days, wet days, and we went out and we saw a bachelor herd of impala, beautiful big male, and we set up on that, and Rob made an okay shot. I think he shot it just a far back in the lung, and the impala turned and came running down towards us, and it got into some little thorn trees, and we were walking along like that, and we bumped it, and it ran out, and I said to Rob, there it is, and the man took a shot and he shot it in the back of the head, and I said, oh shit, there go the horns, and he shot his impala's horn clean off. You'll see in the photograph, it's a little bloody. We stuck it back on. We managed to get some great photos, and that was our, his first animal with his 270 Winchester short mag, and this was the first hunting trip that he had it on. So that all went well, and he got his impala. So we carried on hunting that afternoon, and we didn't get anything that afternoon, and we headed back to the lodge to hear all the stories of the group of guys, what they had shot on this trip. And the next morning we were up bright and early, off to go and hunt again. We were after kudu, we were after warthog, we were after springbuck, and we were after blesbuck. So we headed on back to my uncle's place, and we managed to hunt. It was grey. It was one of these grey days, kind of like what I've got behind me right now. And nothing pops. You know, sunlight always makes an animal stand out beautifully, especially when you're glassing long distance across valleys. The kudu come out or the horns shine. So we struggled a bit in the morning, and we didn't get anything in the morning. That type of weather, rainy, cold weather, the warthogs don't come out. We'd gone through a massive drought this year, and then we had all that big rain I showed you in the previous one, where it was the most forecasted rain and thing. And because of the drought and the rain, we had lost a lot of warthogs. Warthogs were dying in their holes. It was just not a good year for warthogs. So we were struggling with warthogs, where warthogs were normally our go-to animals for a client's first animal. It would have been a warthog, an impala, and a blessbuck. Those are the type of animals that you break the ice with on a trip, you know, because there are plenty of them. But because of this drought that we had, and then the massive amounts of rain, the warthogs had died a lot. So finding pigs became quite tricky. It became one of our trickier animals to hunt. So the rest of the day went on, and that afternoon we went to another section of the property, and we started our stalk. And we walked like a ridge line, and on the top of the ridge line, once you got to the point, you had this beautiful valley that like ran to the left of you, made a horseshoe in front of you. So it was this little knob gave you perfect glassing of across the valley in front of you, where I'd shot a lot of kudus previously, and to the left of you there was a bit of an advantage where you could see the kudu this side. So we got to the end, and we were glassing and glassing and glassing the whole afternoon. We spent glassing there, and we hadn't spotted anything. And when we turned around and we started walking back on the ridge, a kudu cow barked at us. Now obviously I'm walking up the ridge, it's all on my right hand side, and with that I stopped and I put the sticks out, and I got Rob to come put his rifle on the shooting sticks, and the kudu cow walked out like that, and with that this beaut of a kudu bull came out, and I got Rob to put his rifle up, made a pin perfect shot. I think it was one of the closest bulls I've shot with a client. It was less than 80 yards away, and he thumped it with that 270 short mag, and it went one step, two step, and it fell over. And Robert was extremely happy. We took some awesome photos there, and we probably only had about an hour left of hunting, so it was a great way to end the day. And we loaded everything up, and off we went to the skinning shed. The trackers got it all skinned up, and we headed back home. But with the rain this whole day, his rifle was getting wet and dry and wet and dry. He packed his rifle in his gun bag, put it in his room. I think he cleaned it that night. So the next morning we headed out to go and look for warthog. It was the first sunny day we had, and we ended up on a different property now. They had these big open old alfalfa fields where the warthogs used to come into, and Rob pulled his rifle out the bag, picked it up, looked through this beautiful new scope of his, and the whole inside was absolutely murky. But he'd said to me when he shot his kudu, he said, I had a lot of water on the lens. I struggled a bit to see, but I could see enough to shoot. So we thought it was water on the outside of the lens. Meanwhile, this new scope of his had drawn all the moisture in throughout the day, and then overnight just misted up that thing. So that was 2 days into his safari, and his brand new 270 rifle with its Pentex scope was no good to us. So it's a thing that everyone needs to do is when you're coming out, make sure you've tested your weapon that you bring with you, that you don't have the disappointment of it failing on you when you come out to South Africa. So with that, we just packed it away. I pulled out my old 30-06, I said to him, she's beat up, she's old, but she's trustworthy. It can get rained on, it can get snowed on, it'll work. And we carried on hunting. We found a warthog. It was our last day in this area before we moved camps again. And by no means a trophy, guys. It was just a warthog representative. And Rob put it on the shoulder, boom, got his warthog. We got that all packed up and packed out the way. And off we went to the next camp the next morning for our springbuck, our blessbuck, and then he decided he'd like to hunt blue wildebeest as well on top of his list. So we got to the new camp, and that property had blessbuck on it. So we went out and we managed to find ourselves a blessbuck ram with, not an old ram, but got some white in his horns. And we got our blessbuck out the way because the next morning we had to leave bright and early to travel 2.5 hours away to go and shoot a springbuck. So this is also another thing for you guys. When you come out, I did a show tip questions and stuff on YouTube, and I suggest every person who's planning a trip to South Africa, go and have a listen to that, because there are some important points that I put in there which will make your trip way smoother if you get the chance and opportunity to ask the outfitter the questions. And these guys had springbuck on their list, and there were no springbuck in the quota in any spot close by to us. So we had a 2.5 hour drive out of camp. We've just arrived at camp. The next morning, 2.5 hours in the pickup again to travel to go and hunt a springbuck in another area. Never been to the place before, don't know what the quality is like. We as guides just get pointed in directions and have to make the most of where we can hunt, So off we went. Bitterly cold, it's winter. Got to this farm, it's these beautiful big rolling hills. And very open, very much what springbuck love. And then on this property, they had mountain reedbuck, they had springbuck, they had fallow deer, they had red hartebeest, black wildebeest, all low fence, beautiful property to hunt. It's really probably one of my favorite places to go hunt with the client. Super tricky, long shots. So now we head out on our springbuck hunt, and these springbucks have like little pockets around. The farmer pointed me in a direction, walk up this valley, have a look here. So we headed out and we bumped into our first springbuck ram. It gave us the slip, and then further up the valley I bumped into a really old springbuck ram. So for us as guides, the biggest thing that you want to hunt is something that's extremely mature. So the older the animal, the better the animal. It's way past its breeding time. You need to take it out to encourage the young rams to take over and to keep the gene pool up. So we spotted the springbuck ram. We made a stalk. Guys, I've mentioned before, these things are like your guys' speed buck. You shoot them long distances. And I popped Robert on the shooting sticks with a 30-06. And he lined up the springbuck and he squeezed the shot off, and all I saw was a cloud of dust like 5 meters beyond it. And I looked at him and I said, "Were you aiming at the springbuck?" And he says, "Yes, I did." I said, reload, it looks like you've missed." And with that, the springbuck was trotting and still jumping and going along, and next minute the springbuck just stopped and fell clean over. I was like, that's a new one for me. So once we got to the springbuck on inspection, we were looking. I said, well, you aimed at the, where the leg meets the body. As a guide, we always tell them to shoot on the shoulder. We want to make as much damage as possible, break bone. His shot had gone high. So he pulled his shot slightly, but he shot the springbuck. He caught the top of the lungs going out. And I said to him, man, that's quite interesting that now all of a sudden my rifle is shooting 3 inches higher than what it should be shooting. And we took photos and all sorted. We packed up, and it was a long drive back home. And we just discussing this in the truck on the way home. And man, the rifle was all good at the lodge, but now you're shooting three. When we get back to the lodge, we'll check the rifle. We put the box up. Robert sat behind it, lined it all up. Boom, rifle was perfect again. So now I started like questioning myself, and my brain's giving me, trying to figure out why you shot so high. Shooting sticks, you guys tend to shoot a little higher with shooting sticks. That's understandable. But the height difference we got wasn't was too much for just being the shooting sticks. Robert was a really, really good shot, and he was comfortable with the rifle, even though it wasn't his. And I was chatting to another old professional hunter, and it's good to sit around the fire and chat about these things with the old guys who've been part of the industry for years, and soak up the knowledge that they are willing to offer. Some of the old guys sit there and are quiet and don't, but there are guys there that are willing to share. And I was busy chatting to him, and he was going, "What rifle?" And I said, "No, 30-06. What grain bullet?" And he was like, "No, my 150 grain bullet. That's all I shoot. I shoot 150 grain for darker right up to eland. I've never had any issues before, but this is the first time I've noticed I've shot a bit high." So he says, "But Wayne, you must understand, you coming from sea level, where your rifle's zeroed, and you have just traveled so many hours inland, and now you're sitting way above sea level. You're sitting probably, I think 3,000 to 4,000 feet above sea level now." He says, "It's going to change the trajectory of your bullet." And I was like, that's interesting. I've never thought of that, because now you can take going from dense air along the coast and you're heading inland, the air is getting thinner, so there's less drag on your bullet. So hence the reason the bullet travel was a bit higher. You guys can comment, mention in the comment there if this makes sense or makes no sense. But the old PH said to me, his rifles that are zeroed on the coastline shot completely differently when they went inland, when they got higher elevation above sea level. So if this is true, drop a comment there below and let me know if I'm talking jive. But it seems to make sense, because every time we have traveled inland and gone and hunted at higher elevations, I've always had to zero my rifle again, because it always shot way higher than what I zeroed it at home. So it'd be interesting to hear from you guys. So that was quite a cool thing to find out, sitting around the campfire talking to the older PHs. So we had one day left on our safari. We had a great evening. Robert was stoked. He got his springbuck. He's got his blessed buck. We've shot a warthog. We've got a kudu in the bag and a beautiful impala. He just said, "I wanted a blue wildebeest." So the property we were on again, struggling again for numbers, guys. So I made a few phone calls, and I found a stock farm close enough to us. It was about a 45-minute to an hour's drive away from us, where they had this blue wildebeest that had joined the cattle herd and wasn't supposed to be in amongst the cattle, because for those of you who don't know, our blue wildebeest carry a disease, what they call snotsiekte, and it can get transferred to cattle, and it can cause a lot of issues. So this guy said, "Please come out with your client. I've got a blue wildebeest. It's one bull. He's not a massive bull, but I need him hunted out of my cattle herd." So we went bright and early the next morning, and we were pointed in the direction. They said he's extremely wild and skittish, and we needed to, obviously they've had a couple of guys come in there and hunt him, and we must have just had all the stars aligned for us, and we got set up. I was actually quite clever. There was a little dam on this property, and we went and hidden amongst the thorn trees. And my tracker and one of the farm hands who collected the cattle made as if they were going to collect the cattle. And what this blue wildebeest would do was run away from them and head down towards this thorn tree section where this little dam was. And the farmhand said that's what his loop is. So what we did, we sat up there in ambush, and we were so lucky that he ran the exact path that this guy said he would. And when he came around the one tree, he slowed down just enough for Robert to make the absolutely perfect shot on the trot and thumped him, and he just rolled in a pile of dust. So we had just shot a blue wildebeest for a farmer out of his herd of cattle and finished the trip on a high. A little bit disappointing that Robert couldn't complete his whole trip with his rifle, but it's something to learn from when you come out on your trips. Make sure your product, your stuff that you're using has been tested. You've hunted season in the snow and the rain, that when you get to South Africa, you don't have an issue of, a scope failing on you or a bullet failing on you. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. Do your homework for your next trip. Make sure you chat to your outfitters on the travel and stuff, and make sure when you bring your rifle out that you have tested. So my advice, bring your old faithful whitetail rifle that you've hunted year after year after year, and you will be super successful with it because you'll be comfortable to hunt it. So till later, guys. Cheers.